Hey, what's up guys? My name is Nicholas Corcel and you're watching The Literary Nomad. Earlier this week I found myself wandering through the back alleys of Istanbul looking for something new to read over the holidays. This brought me to a tiny bookstore on the outskirts of Karakoy where I had to walk down a flight of stairs into this big alleyway. It's like a big indoor hallway underground, and it's lined up with different booksellers. And so you'll just continue down this hallway, and then to the left there'll be a guy selling maybe science fiction or the romance novels. It's just all these different stores, and it's full of university students looking for something new to read. Still, most of these stores only had a very tiny section of English language books. And of these, they were all selling pretty much the same thing. They call it like the MK collection, and it's these very, very ugly covers of English language classics. Despite having some interesting titles, I wasn't really intrigued by any of these books due to the nature of just how ugly the titles were, and how if I'm going to buy a classic, I'd rather buy one that's more visually appealing. I was looking for something more unique, something new, and something exciting. This brought me to a tiny bookstore way at the end of the alleyway, kind of tucked in away from everything else, where I just asked the owner if he had anything besides the MK collection in English. Almost offhandedly, he showed me this, a short story collection that's in absolutely horrendous condition that really caught my eye. So it's called 50 Great Short Stories, and so it's got stories by Hemingway, Pushkin, Poe, O'Hara, Faulkner, Turber, O. Henry, Joyce, Chekhov, and countless other great writers. This book was published in 1962, and you can really tell by looking at it. And holding this book in my hand and purchasing it and taking it home with me and just kind of interacting with it over the last week has made me think a lot about the value and importance of physical books, especially in this modern, digitally obsessed culture that we live in today. While on some levels this book is very ugly, you flip through the pages and you see writing in countless different languages. You see a number that you have no idea what it means. You see little drawings. You see a math equation. There's just so many little intricate details, and you're seeing different people's interactions with this text from all over the world throughout history. And it adds a deeper level of understanding and experience to this act of physically opening it up and reading. Like right here, I'm looking, it's got somebody's name and it's got a little heart on it. And so when I'm going through and I'm reading a story and I see different things are underlined, it's physically changing the experience that I'm having with the text in a way that is impossible with an ebook, right? When you're reading an ebook, the whole experience is incredibly sterile. You're getting exactly what the author intended, but that's it. You're not as directly engaged in the back and forth and the conversational aspect of great fiction, which I think is one of the most important yet hardly ever spoken about aspects of reading. So many people have read this great book. They've held it in their backpacks, they've read it on planes, on boats, they've written annotations, they've done all kinds of things with this. And all of the interactions I have with it over the next year or so as I work through however many stories there are, I think like 50 or 60 of them, I will be adding to this great conversation before I leave it somewhere else for somebody else to enjoy. This is a value of physical books that is hardly ever talked about. We have an obsession with talking about used books strictly from the point of how much money will they be worth, or from a collector's perspective. And while of course there is value in preserving first editions, you won't hear me ever saying there's not. I write frequently for a company that specializes in reselling just that. I also think that it's important to preserve the fiction that isn't worth a lot of money. The weird third editions that have a typo, the book that got scribbled in by a university student backpacking through Argentina. All of these things will add and almost make your book unique in a sense that nobody else in the world has it, right? Nobody else in the world has this exact book. Nobody has the same annotations that I have in it, and so nobody is going to get this exact experience that I'm getting right now as I read it. And I think that that's really important. I think that's something that we should cherish and really work towards preserving. People love to push back against writing and drawing in your books, and I couldn't disagree with them more. I think that that's important. I think it should be encouraged and celebrated. When I write a book and release it, nothing pleases me more than seeing somebody annotate in it, or have their own experience with it, or interact with the text in a conversational manner. Because at the end of the day, that's all art is. It's a conversation between the artist and the reader. And when you make annotations, you're adding another layer to that conversation. In the case of this book, it's no longer a conversation between just me and the writer of whatever story I'm reading. It's a conversation between me, the writer who originally wrote it, the guy who read it on his trip to Berlin, a guy who lived in Paris, and then the guy who dropped it off in this used bookstore in Istanbul. We're all partaking in a shared conversation that spans multiple generations. This conversation is layered and deep in a way that is impossible to get in really any other way. And I think that as readers and writers, these are things that we should actively seek out. Embracing the masters of old will help us shape modern fiction. Engaging in this multi-generational conversation is one of the best and easiest ways to improve as a writer in the modern age. All you have to do is pick up a book and have an honest and truthful interaction with it. Take it for what it is and where you're feeling at the time. My interaction reading this book while living on the road in Istanbul will be much different than the person's interaction who gets it in 15 years when I drop it off at a bookstore in Chicago. And that's okay. That should be celebrated. This variety in story and experience is how we have such a diverse and expansive literary canon. And on that note, I just want to leave you with one more thing. Don't be afraid of the ugly, beaten up, and battered book that you see in the used bookstore for 99 cents, but rather go toward it, pick it up, flip through the pages, and see what you find, because you might be surprised. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. My name is Nicholas Corcel, and I hope you have a happy holiday.